brothel windows, but it's quiet. No drunken brawls, no shouts of pleasure. Place even open?
Weird West had some big shoes, well, big cowboy boots to fill. This is the first title from Wolfeye Studios, founded by Rafael Colantonio. He was the founder of Arkane. He directed titles like Arx Fatalis, Dark Messiah, Dishonored, and Prey, some of my favorite games. As well, this is the first game I played since finishing Elden Ring. That had me utterly engrossed the last few weeks. So how is Weird West overall? It's great. It's able to pull those design approaches from Arkane titles and shift it to a smaller scope and scale, and switch it to an isometric perspective. Don't go in expecting the same level of scope or interactivity of games like Prey, but what it focuses on, it does it very well. So if you're a fan of Arkane titles, games that fall under that nebulous term of immersive sim, the old Fallout titles, the tabletop RPG Deadlands, or the Desperado titles, which I've seen this game get a number of comparisons to, it's worth your time checking out Weird West.
Tonight, though, that's all gonna change. Destiny's calling, and it ain't taking no for an answer.
For disclosure, I did receive an early key to play through Weird West prior to launch. I played this on PC. I mostly played with the keyboard and mouse, although I gave it a quick try with a controller. It worked fairly well considering it's isometric. I didn't encounter any major glitches or bugs, something which sadly has become the norm with new releases. For those who have Game Pass on Xbox, you could find Weird West on it as of this video's release. In Weird West, we'll get to play as 5 different characters in this Wild West setting with a twist. This is a world where the supernatural has a presence as well. Now, having multiple protagonists can be a tricky thing to do right. However, Weird West does a good job of connecting all their stories together, and you even have the opportunity to recruit past characters to join your posse. A strange brand on each of them draws them together, starting with a former bounty hunter, pulled back into that world after family is attacked. A pigman, cursed by a witch as we try to piece together our forgotten memories. A member of the Lost Fire Nation, dealing with the embodiment of greed, Wendigo. A werewolf at the center of prophecy. And an onerous, those who see the future and what is seen as the end of the world. She also does the Jeb Bush pose on the inventory or pause screen. Each character has different conflicts and struggles, but there's commonality amongst all of them. The choices and decisions of what we do and how we play will be kept in mind by the world we're in.
Now, though, the prophecy's coming. One of salvation, and you're at its center.
If I were to make a comparison to Arkane titles in regards to gameplay in Weird West, it would be Dark Messiah, in the sense of the sheer chaotic nature that game had. Sure, you can kick barrels at enemies here. However, that's not the aspects of where that chaos comes from. We have revolvers, rifles, shotguns, and bows for ranged attacks. You have the option to go max pain with these as well.
It's pain!
We can get up close and personal with kicks and melee weapons. We also have explosives like dynamite and lightning in a bottle. Stealth is also an option to sneak up and knock out enemies. Each character will have 4 unique abilities. Some range from running charges, summoning allies, turning foes to friends, and tornadoes. One can even turn to a werewolf for a short period of time. Each weapon type also has a few unique skills we could learn, from explosive shots, electrical shots, silent shots. There's plenty of choices here. We'll need to collect nymph relics, found from completing quests or exploring the world, to learn these abilities. We also have perks which carry over in between each character. Some perks allow you to jump higher, do more damage when enemies are unaware, and get better deals at stores. So where does the chaos come from? It's where the real fun of Weird West is had. What do we have around us? Well, there's plenty of oil lamps, oil barrels, TNT barrels, torches, chemical barrels. A kick, a toss, a shot from a gun, and off they go. Fire begins to spread. Before you know it, things may have spread way further than you think. One memorable moment for me had me clearing out an obstacle in the house, which unintentionally led to the death of a horse outside. Fire might reach another flammable source to set off, or spread amongst surfaces like grass. In a way, it reminds me a lot of Far Cry 2 and how it could spread. However, not all conditions will lead to spreading. Water, whether from barrels, rivers, or rain, will stop it. However, in that case, items that make use of electricity, like lightning in a bottle, will become much more effective with water around. Chemical barrels can be used to spread poison. Placement of these environmental factors makes sense in the world of Weird West. Of course they'll use oil lamps and torches to keep things lit. Of course they'll make use of TNT and chemical barrels for the purposes of mining. It doesn't exactly follow that video game logic of having red barrels there just because. It makes sense in this world. When it comes to these situations, if you think to yourself, hey, I wonder if, then the game is going to allow for it. You also come across plenty of outcomes that you weren't expecting. It very much continues that immersive sim design philosophy here, and shifts it away from that common first-person perspective to an isometric world. I would have a lot of fun just gathering a bunch of flammable objects together and firing to watch the aftermath. Or instead of taking out a room full of enemies by shooting them, I'd shoot all the flammable objects in the room and let them do the work. Now, I will say that one of my biggest issues I had with Weird West is some of the unique abilities are a bit lackluster. Granted, this may also be the case where I wasn't using them to their full potential. Like any game along these lines, someone will find unique ways to make use of them. I want abilities more along the lines like where you have a fire outline that spreads. These kind of abilities work really well with the environments. Granted, there's a case of 20 unique abilities across the game as each character gets 4. Well, 21 including the werewolf shift. I would love to see more unique abilities that really put emphasis on causing chaos in their surroundings, because that's where the game truly shines. There's also plenty of fun to be had just going into town and causing some destruction as well, as you could do that here in Weird West. Want to torch a town to the ground? Go for it, but be ready to deal with the consequences. Your reputation will drop, your bounty goes up. However, towns are a source for side quests and other goodies, so you may not want to torch them right away. Take up some bounty jobs, one of the game's best sources for amusement in the combat encounters you'll find yourself in. Pick up supplies, make some bars from the nuggets you find to sell for some nice cash. Hire some people for your crew to join in on your journeys. Or if you want to cause some more subtle chaos, wait until night when people are asleep, then stealth your way into places to pickpocket or find other goodies. If you get into fights with gangs, it's common for someone to take a vendetta against you. You'll very likely run across them later as they seek revenge. On the other side of the coin, a friend may drop in to give you a hand in certain situations if you did something good for them earlier on. It's always nice to have them drop in. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Travel in Weird West is akin to the old Fallout titles of how you select from your map and where you want to go. As well, you'll come across encounters on your trips. These can be combat encounters, to merchants, to story moments with something foreboding on the horizon. One thing I love is the use of vultures that will come down to eat carcasses. Very Wild West. Of course, you could also kill them for a source of food. If you're playing as the pigman or the werewolf, you could also make use of carcasses as well as a source of food for healing. I think the word foreboding is the best way of describing the atmosphere to Weird West. This is driven through cryptic conversations with various characters we'll come across in our travels.
Something don't feel right. Hairs on your neck wake up. Danger's close.
They lay the foundation, intrigue, and clues of what's really going on in this land. It also doesn't hurt that this game has a fantastic soundtrack. The background ambience tracks are distinct and memorable. There's also a number of vocal tracks that will play at key scenes during the game. There are a couple of standout moments in the game where the atmosphere, as great as it is, really dials it up a notch. While the critical path remains the same on each playthrough, the secondary locations will change up. These areas, like smaller abandoned towns, temples, mines, will change. Names will be different, layouts will be different. Now, I usually prefer everything to be handcrafted, but I think this is a fair compromise. The main quest is the same, with tweaks to the secondary world around us. The main quest is where the game puts the most focus on, and the story builds enough intrigue throughout the game to keep you playing on to see what happens. As this isn't a AAA title, you could get away with minimal voice acting. This certainly helps in how this game reacts to your choices. There is a great sounding narrator that perks up at key moments throughout the story to help drive things forward.
In the air, smell of gunpowder. Your son dead in the dirt outside, and a burning at your neck. Well now, let's see if we got this straight. A witch named Ruth, who turns men into monsters. A suicidal tree holding the souls of all pigmen. And a talking snout who wants to meet for a swampside chat. That about the size of it?
Although I do wish in some cases some key characters could have been voiced. For example, there's a pigman who talks in rhymes. I would have loved to hear him. It would have been divine. Some of these scenarios are fairly straightforward, such as deciding on seeking revenge or deciding on forgiveness. However, as the game goes on, things get more complex, and there's going to be a lot more pause for thought. One highlight of the game is in the 4th of the 5 chapters, where there's a number of choices we have in a complicated scenario with conflicting characters and beliefs. I found myself doing some quick saves to see in various ways how the situation could play out. This all leads up to a conclusion that takes into consideration the choices that you made along the way with each of your 5 characters. As I mentioned earlier, Weird West doesn't have the scope or level of interactivity that games like Prey or Dishonored offered. However, it is able to shrink down that scope to create a fun title that kept me engaged all the way through. Now, I do prefer these kind of games from a first-person perspective, but Weird West is able to make the shift to the isometric perspective that I consider a success and what the team was going for. It's an excellent first title from Wolfeye Studios. I look forward to seeing what additional planned content they will have in the future for Weird West. And while these games have a history of not exactly doing well sales-wise, having things on a smaller scale and budget here do make those chances of success much better. It does take guts to leave what must have been a cushy position. Arkane was under the Bethesda umbrella, which is now under the Microsoft umbrella. I'm always a supporter of these kind of games, so here's to hoping it does well for Wolfeye and seeing where things go from there.